Wah! Yes, we are doing the Catafalque, Geometria. Woo. Now, I've come across some difficult albums to review so far, but I can't say that I've heard anything in this style before, in how it seamlessly meshes electronic metal, jazz, and Hungarian folk elements, not to mention contemporary ones, into an album with an eclectic mix and beautiful female vocals. There's something about Uralic languages like Hungarian which gives an album like this one a distinct, esoteric vibe that you don't typically get from music as well. I suppose you could cite Nietzsche as an influence, or any number of Toby Driver's projects, and not to mention Ulva's gothic, synth-driven albums, especially on songs like Cia Mogied Fresco going into Toltes. And I don't mean the beginning with that thick, post-metal-esque, scratchy guitar lead that sounds like metal plates grinding against tiger wire. I mean in the second groove here, in how the catchy, genty chord progression develops and leads into a MIDI synth, which then becomes the main motif in the next song, Tortes. The flow between the two remaining as smooth as a particularly smooth surface, the hallmark of good songwriting. But it's honestly hard to delineate each element, as the track listing itself is so variable, avant-garde, and moreover unique. Take the opener as just one example in how the driving, jazzy, percussive work plods along with a discernible bass, with violins squealing over the top and organ keys droning, with various folk elements poking their weave in the thread here and there. Then in how the song develops with Martina Horvath's vocals, and how the progression builds with the addition of a grungy, albeit somewhat generic guitar lead. The creativity here must be applauded, and it makes me wonder what other splices of genres this man has successfully created in other albums. Now, despite being labeled as an avant-garde metal album, there are whole songs here which are entirely devoid of metal influences, as the instrumental palette even includes violins and an assortment of brass influences alongside the bottomless potential from synths. Tortoise, as briefly described before, is one of the best examples for the electronic work being throttled with its modulating MIDI lead and Horvath's vocals succeeding as an engaging melodic component. But there are whole cuts here which are jazzier yet. Take Goethe, which has this spicy, circusy tempo, the brass section further embroidering with a fucking saxophone that remains convincing with its spiraling passages. So remember, the song following replaces any previously held joviality with this brooding, darker soundscape, wholly rooted in these thicker forms of metal colored with an unmistakably death metal guitar lead by the 3-minute mark, which sounds almost exactly like Bolt Thrower, especially in how the tempo is woven in. Mind you, it does contain one element which sounds a lot like Arian's organ bloody keyboard work at one point. Like, it also deserves to be mentioned here, it's got a thick stoner metal grungy riff with this tasty progression. It just burns so thick with distortion and ash. It's just gorgeous and one of the best tonal layers on the album. I only wish there was more of it, to be honest. And I gotta love how this song develops and how smooth the transitions are and how they utilize those acoustic folk elements as a perfect contrast to that thick feedback and distortion. The ending is meditative as hell, and the sample feels evocative, like as though engineered by Godspeed You Black Emperor at their very best. Sick is the most demonic, sinister track on here for me, however. There's something so menacing and haunting about that swing beat on the drums and how the leading riff harmonizes with it. There's even a horn embellishment introduced in the midpoint before being re-delivered by the end with these radio-grained vocals, creating a truly bloody, engrossing portrait whilst those thick walls of distorted bass just hum underneath. Bohra Anap is the next song, and it contains one of the most folk-tinged passages of music despite the departure by the 2-minute mark. It's, again, all in the delivery of the female vocals. They have this traditionalist choral air to their cadence and melody that gives it that unique flavor, much unlike water. Yet there are effects that the guitar lead at the start is laden with, which sounds almost Eastern in a way, yet also stoner rock-esque in another. I don't know, there's something about the rolling progression which reminds me of surfing full-on tubes, bro. This song is one of the best on the album though, for how it keeps on advancing with mutually exclusive tonal layers and motifs, transforming it into a different beast entirely. Like for example, the offbeat bubbling synths, which are reminiscent of the ones being used on Harjo. An interlude prior, which was devoid of any interesting vocal melody, unfortunately. Fucking, there's even a vocoder, and the drumming contains some really complex time signatures and alternating fills, and the song following, Tenga Tenga. I mean, wow, this album just goes from strength to strength. The screeching dust-racked violins billowing at the start of this track. My bloody god, duderoos, it's such an evocative, rich texture to build from, even if the guitar passage and rolling percussion thereafter doesn't utilize anything from it. It really does feel like a Sunkill Moon song at some points, with the way the acoustic is plucked and the progressions he's choosing. I mean, all that's missing here is Mark Kozelek's bloody trademark crooner ruing. And the track to finish, Enek Abuser Mezocro, is a tale told in heaviness. The same funeral doom post-metal feedback distorted guitar leads come back into the fray and throttle the center stage of the song with this looping riff that you don't ever want to stop. Now, in terms of the album itself, there are some factors which stop it from being an absolute undeniable straight classic, and that is its somewhat weightless, structured, or at the very least embellished exterior at certain moments here. Not that it sets out compositionally to have a spectacular ear-crushing, consistently infectious slew of riffs or solos. I just kind of wish that it did, just to add another dimension of technicality to the heavier passages. Occasionally it seems a little devoid of detail, the songwriting lacking of some spectacular individual instrumental highlights, especially in the synth-led passages. I just don't feel like there's enough mastery over some of those textures, besides on a song like Totas, to really engage me here. Also, because there are so many instrumental elements and genres, the inclusion of some at certain moments can seem unnecessary or conflicting, but nonetheless, this is just such an ambitious album, and the execution of pretty much all of them at pretty much every point here is pretty fucking good, mate. It's pretty fucking superb. Not to mention the production is warm and balanced at pretty much every moment here. So yeah, I'll just finish this review up, chuck it a 4.2. Yeah, I do love the heaviness. Some of the folk tinged passages are really good. I love her vocals. The dude's vocals are a bit gaudy sometimes, but yeah, just a pretty fucking superb album, boys. Alright then, I'll catch you later. Just have a good one, man. It's that simple. I appreciate all feedback and new subscribers and whatever you want to do, but yeah, fucking too easy, man. Alright then, I'll catch you later. Whee!